Hi, I'm Bud from Strum Supply. First, I want to apologize for not posting lessons for the last few weeks. I was off on vacation in Scotland, traveling around with a couple fabulous musicians who do escorted vacations in Ireland and Scotland. Every night we had music, either they performed for us or local musicians. It was fantastic. I will get back to posting a lesson every week going forward. Today, we're going to jump into music notation. What is music notation? Well, when you take music and you try to put it down on paper, you have to have a way to do that. So, how do you read sheet music? We're going to go through the very basics of standard notation. Then we're going to go into tab, which is a notation that's very common and useful for stringed instruments. And if you hang in there, it's about 15 minutes, I will show you how to map the standard notation treble clef to your guitar fretboard. There's a lot of information packed in here I think will be really useful. So please give us feedback, help us know whether we're on the right track helping you, and give us a thumbs up or a like or subscribe. Thanks for coming back.
Today we're going to talk about the very basics of music notation. This is by no means intended to be a complete discussion of this topic. There's so much more to be learned, but I'm going to touch on the very basics so that if you have the need to figure out how to play a song that's in a book using standard notation, you'll be able to figure out how to understand the notes that are there, the melody, and in fact, using these principles, you could actually translate that into tab if you wanted to. For most of us guitar players, we use tab. There's an enormous amount of tab notation available out on the web, but it's a good thing to know these foundational concepts. So first of all is the staff. This is the staff. It's always got 5 lines. There are 4 spaces between those 5 lines, and this is the clef signature, in this case the treble clef. We'll talk more about this as we go forward, but this is the very foundation of this is that the clef tells you the relationship of the lines and spaces to the notes. So in this case, because this is the treble clef signature, so this is every good boy does fine, and F-A-C-E. A great source of information is Wikipedia. It's tempting to go into more detail than I should. I want to try and keep this short because I know that most of you out on YouTube want to get the information quickly and briefly. I'm going to go to some of these pages and just touch on real highlights, but know that these are out there and you can look into them in more detail. We're going to start with the page on clef. And the interesting thing about clef is that there are different clef signatures. This is taking a long time to load. So here are the typical clef signatures. Treble clef and bass clef are the only 2 you will probably see in any of the books that you're going to have for music. However, this the C clef, or the alto clef is sometimes called. The alto clef is a legitimate signature. Here's the relationship of those clefs, the actual notes on those clefs, and if we were to zoom in on this particular image right here, you can see that the treble clef, the note that is on a line below the bottom line of the staff, excuse me, is C4. C4 is the middle C. If you look here on this clef, you can see in the alto clef that middle C is right in the middle, and in fact, it always is the note the line that passes through the middle of this signature is always middle C. And then similarly on the bass clef, middle C is the line above the top of the staff for the bass clef. So if you think of it in these terms, this note and this note are the same. So with the treble clef and the bass clef, you can actually cover all notes from C2. C2, by the way, means the second octave on the piano, from C2 all the way up to C6. 4 full octaves on the piano can be covered with just the use of the bass clef and the treble clef. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about the staff, and the thing I want you to understand about the staff is that there can be many staffs in a piece of music, in the arrangement of the music. There's interesting information here you can read through, but again, I want to just focus on this one image. Excellent image. It has a lot of information. So this is a very typical kind of notation. This would be like a piano arrangement. I mentioned earlier that maybe in a choral arrangement you would have bass and tenor parts on the bass clef and alto and soprano parts on the treble clef. In this case, for the piano, the right hand typically plays the notes on the treble clef. The left hand plays the notes on the bass clef. I'm not a pianist. I have a keyboard. I play around, but I think generally that's true. The reason I want to show this is sometimes called the great staff or the grand staff, is the combination of multiple clefs being illustrated together. Always in music, when notes are aligned vertically, they're played together. And in this case, you see really the essence of simple notation. You have the staff, you have the clef signature, which tells you how to relate the lines to actual notes. In the case of the bass clef, you can see that the F, it's sometimes called the F clef because the F passes between the two dots. And I learned this as remembering the spaces, all cows eat grass. And so if this is E, eats grass, F is between that. And so you can learn simply by learning FACE and all cows eat grass, ACEG, to remember the notes that relate to the staffs. Now we're going to go to an actual piece of sheet music, and I want to say first of all that I looked around for something that was in the public domain. This is a very, very old song. This is a song you actually know the tune to, but you might not recognize it. It's a song that teachers would sing to their class in the morning, to be sung standing and sung brightly, and it was later adapted into the birthday song. And so originally sung with the words, good morning to you, good morning to you, good morning dear children, good morning to you. And the timing of this is a little different than the way we've adapted the birthday song, but this is essentially the original song. So also I want to point out that this notation, there's a lot I could talk about, but the choral part is the upper part above the words. It's written with the treble clef, and then what you have here is the accompaniment, and this is basically a piano arrangement that could be played with the choral arrangement that's above it. So each staff having a purpose, or in orchestral music, you might have a certain instrument associated with this staff, another with this, another with this, and so this is an example of there are a lot of different ways that the notation gets done. It's fairly common to see the choral part on the treble clef, though. The lead part would be on the treble clef. And in every case, you have the staff, you have the clef, you have the key signature. In this case, one sharp, and one sharp is key of G. And then you have the time signature. We'll talk a little bit about time signatures, but simply this means 3/4 time means that a quarter note gets one beat. There are 3 beats to the measure, and so there's one beat and a new measure begins, and it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Because this is a half note, it gets 2 beats. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So every measure having 3 beats and a quarter note being a beat. That is the essence of music notation. Now there's lots more. This is a rest. This is a bird's eye, which has a certain meaning. So I'm not going to go into all those things. You have enough to be able to do the basics with this foundational understanding of standard notation. Instead, I want to switch and talk about tab, and I'm trying to go fast. I can get a lot of information in here, so hopefully I'm being clear. Now, tab is a notation that actually originated, according to Wikipedia. Sometimes Wikipedia is not right, but I think this makes sense. Used on the French lute, and I'm just going to skip down and look at two images. So first of all, this image is very important. This image is relates to the strings on a guitar, and this is what you would typically see. A tab could actually be typed on a typewriter when there were still typewriters. You can do this on your computer. It's a simple notation. It's pretty easy. The important thing is to understand that, like the notes in standard notation, lower notes are lower in the staff, higher pitched notes are higher in the staff. The same is true with tab. This is your sixth string, E. This is the lowest note, and the pitch goes up as you go up to the number one string, which is your open E string, their first string. And this also shows you that when notes are played or aligned vertically, they're played together at the same time. So what we have here is the E chord. The E chord is played by playing the A string with it fretted at the second fret, D string at the second fret, G string at the first fret. So there's an E chord, an F chord, a G chord, using tab notation. And this illustration here is great because it shows you that the chord that is being illustrated in standard notation here is being illustrated in tabular notation here. And it's still a chord. It still describes exactly the same notes. It's just done in a different way. And I should add that when you see the notes aligned vertically, they're played together, but then you can have notes that are played individually because they are spaced horizontally apart, and there's no other note in that horizontal position. So lastly, I want to show you that there's a tremendous amount of tab information out there on the web, and I'm not endorsing any particular page. I'm rather indiscriminate in going out there and finding tab wherever I can. I will tell you there's some terrible tab out there on the web, so I will use multiple sources, and I will try playing in different people's tab. You can see it will tell you who wrote this tab in each of these collections, because it's basically just people contributing to the information. But here is the Blackbird, the Beatles' great fingerstyle guitar song, and a song that I've been learning to play and practicing a lot lately. So there's a lot of tab out there. You can take this and you can actually learn to play the song by following the tab. So finally, I just want to say that you can relate standard notation to your guitar fretboard. Remember I said this was middle C. Middle C is actually it relates to the A string at the third fret. So I've illustrated here, this is C4, which is middle C. This is the way it would look in standard notation. If you were to play E, which is the bottom line in the treble clef, that would be the D string at the second fret. And if you were to play the top line in the treble fret, that would be your first string at the first fret, which is an F. And so the reason for me to illustrate this is just it gives you some landmarks. You can learn to play songs in the treble clef knowing that you're basically going to be navigating between the A string and your E string. Finally, I do want to say that this is playing 2 octaves on the guitar. If you play across all 6 strings, you have the opportunity to play through an entire 2 octaves. So Earlier, I showed you that if you were to play the bottom line on the treble clef, it would be the D string at the 2nd fret. That's here. So here's the 1st octave, and then here's the 2nd octave. I hope this was helpful. Please subscribe. Come back for the next lesson. Thanks so much.